This young man is Chu Guang, a lucky survivor in a post-apocalyptic world. Today he went out to scavenge for food and some scrap from the wilds, but he was so exhausted that he unexpectedly dozed off. In his dream, Chu Guang saw a bevy of beauties taking turns caring for him, but when he opened his eyes, what greeted him was a gigantic hyena. Holy smokes, that scared the life out of me. Chu Guang scrambled to his feet and bolted. Luckily, the combat power of the two-headed hyena wasn't very high, and after running for a while, Chu Guang finally managed to shake it off. But by now, it was already getting late. It's too dangerous to wander this monster-infested wasteland, so even though he was starving, he chose to return to the safety of his base. Chu Guang's base is called Shelter 404, located in an abandoned sanatorium. Although these ruins look unremarkable, even downright shabby, what's hidden inside is a whole different world. Chu Guang walked through a modern door into a completely different space. You have finally returned, Master. There was even an assistant robot named Xiao Qi. Seeing its master return, Xiao Qi got as excited as a puppy, rushing out to greet him and then spinning around him non-stop, making Chu Guang dizzy. Xiao Qi, calm down, don't get so worked up. I was only gone for half a day. For a programmed robot like Xiao Qi, half a day was an eternity, especially since Chu Guang had a backlog of tasks and it relentlessly urged him to complete his missions. The reason Xiao Qi reacted this way was because Chu Guang is the administrator of Shelter 404 in this wasteland world. As the administrator of a shelter, he could at least live a relatively safe life and have enough food to stave off hunger. While he wasn't exactly rolling in dough, at least he wouldn't starve to death or get bodied by monsters. But this administrator gig wasn't a cakewalk. It came with specific responsibilities that had to be fulfilled. His main job was to use Earth's internet to guide a group of beings known as players, with the goal of luring them to this wasteland to build up his own power base. This was the perfect mission for Chu Guang, who had been accidentally ISEKAI'd here 5 months ago. He sat down in front of a bank of computer monitors, his face lit up with excitement, ready to get started. The Wasteland Online noob farming project was officially a go. Chu Guang used the computer system to infiltrate various group chats on Earth, and this was his chance to flex his god-tier scamming skills. Just like today, he joined a chat group called the Pro Gamers Club. With a classic opening line, Chu Guang announced that his company had just developed a full-dive virtual reality MMORPG. At first, most of the members in the chat were skeptical, because if such tech actually existed, it would have already blown up and gone viral. Meanwhile, on Earth, a college student was typing away in his dorm room. He was also a member of the Pro Gamers Club, and he found Chu Guang's announcement absolutely hilarious. If a full-dive VR technology was real, it would be applied in other fields first. There's no way a game would be the first thing they'd develop. He was just about to flame Chu Guang for being a scammer when a new message popped up that made him freeze. If it's for real, who wants to be a beta tester? Oh, the message came with a link that looked surprisingly legit. Back in the wasteland, Chu Guang was typing away catfishing people with expert skill. As you can see, his master plan is to trick people from Earth into coming to this world. As a player in a virtual reality game, and that game's name was Wasteland. Currently, he has scammed 11 people into pre-ordering. The number of pre-ordering gamers has to be high enough to complete the quest, and he's acting as a game administrator. Only by completing the quests issued by the system can Chu Guang receive his well-deserved rewards. And speaking of which, fate is truly a strange thing. 5 months ago, Chu Guang was still on Earth, or to be more precise, in China. He was just an ordinary office worker. That day, Chu Guang had signed a massive contract during a celebration party. He only drank a single glass of wine, but after finishing it, a sudden chest pain hit him, followed by a piercing sound that rang out quickly, sending Chu Guang's mind into a daze. As a result, when he opened his eyes, he had been isekai'd to this world. All around him were crumbling ruins. At first he thought it was a prank that maybe someone had thrown him onto a set built for some kind of reality show, so Chu Guang just kept running, trying with all his might to escape from this god-forsaken place. But unexpectedly, this world was much larger than he had imagined, and what was even more terrifying was that Chu Guang had been completely changed from head to toe. At that very moment, that same ear-splitting sound rang out once more. Chu Guang hurriedly covered his ears. Holy crap, my eardrums are gonna burst. Immediately after, something even weirder happened, just like in a video game. A virtual system window suddenly appeared before his eyes, on which was written a short message: "Welcome, scavenger Chu Guang, to the world of Wasteland." This is insane, he thought, absolutely insane. This prank has gone way too far. Chu Guang had only one thought at that moment, and that was to call the cops. But after patting himself down, the only thing he possessed was the clothes on his back, with no other essential items whatsoever, let alone a cell phone. It took Chu Guang a full day to accept reality, after which the gnawing hunger forced him to surrender to his situation. The first order of business was to find food. Unexpectedly, he actually managed to find a place with survivors, which was the survivors' encampment on Bait Street. Without a second thought, Chu Guang went straight in to find food. While he was at it, he also wanted to ask for some intel about this world, but his bad luck streak continued. A man from behind pressed a gun to Chu Guang's head and said in an ice-cold voice, "Don't move, or I'll put a bullet in you. Which vault are you from?" Strangely enough, the man wasn't speaking Chinese but was using some kind of bizarre language. But Chu Guang could understand it, and what's more, he felt he could also speak it. Sure enough, when Chu Guang opened his mouth to speak, he also spoke the same strange language as the man. "Whoa, easy there, man. I'm just passing through and wanted to ask for directions." And while I'm at it, before Chu Guang could finish his sentence, a round was fired from the gun, but luckily he wasn't the one on the receiving end, but a giant bear behind the man. The man Gooder, after taking down the giant bear, he replied to Chu Guang in a very impatient tone. "This wasteland ain't a kid's playground if your gear isn't good enough. Don't run around all over the place or you'll just become monster chow." He then walked over to inspect the bear's corpse. Chu Guang stiffly uttered, "Thanks for saving my life." Actually, looking at it from a certain angle, old Gooder's words weren't wrong at all, because in order to survive and gather intel, Chu Guang had somehow spent 5 months living in the wasteland. In this world 211 years ago, back in 2129, a great war wiped out nearly all of human civilization. Since then, the world has entered the era of the wasteland. Besides all the mutated beasts in this desolate land, there is also the threat from raiders. Although Chu Guang has been here for a while and knows a thing or two about this world, there was still one place that deeply troubled him, the location near where he was. ISEKAI'd 2. Every time Chu Guang got near it, a strange, deafening noise would ring in his head. So Chu Guang made a bold decision. He decided to find the source of that sound and discovered an abandoned nursing home. When he got here, the sound reacted even more strongly. There was no doubt about it. The voice calling to Chu Guang was coming from here. He stepped inside the ruins, and the voice grew even clearer. This made Chu Guang even more certain he was on the right path. Chu Guang pressed on, finally arriving before a massive door. Seriously, this looks like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, and it seemed the voice was coming from behind this very door. Chu Guang stared at the mechanism on the door, with only one thought in his mind: activate it. And he did just that. He placed his palm on the mechanism, and it was a perfect fit. The door immediately swung open, revealing something inside that was waiting for Chu Guang. He started to get nervous. Did I just accidentally unlock the final boss's dungeon? But the moment that thing saw him, it rushed over excitedly like a puppy greeting its owner. "Hello, my boss. I am your little assistant named Little 7, serial number 777. Welcome, Administrator. Congratulations on becoming the administrator of Shelter 404. After Little 7's spiel, the system also sent a new notification. Chu Guang's status had just gotten a major upgrade, specifically from a wasteland scavenger to a shelter administrator. "Dear Administrator, I will assist you in completing your tasks." "Tasks? That's right," Little 7 began to explain enthusiastically. "Here, the shelter administrator must use Earth's internet to summon and guide a group of players here to complete quests. After completing quests, both the players and the administrator receive rewards, allowing them to continuously level up and grow stronger." Hearing this, Chu Guang was over the moon. "So that means I can contact Earth from here, right, Little 7? "That's right. This shelter can not only connect to the internet of the parallel world Earth, but it also has its own official website. That's why it appears on Earth as a full-dive VR game. Players who pre-order the game will automatically receive a serial number and be registered in the refugee resident directory within the management system. The administrator can then select a specific serial number to grant them access to the game. After that, the system will send the player a helmet-like device. Through this device, they can connect to a training pod in the shelter and awaken in this world as an avatar. Hearing this, Chu Guang was ecstatic. His plot armor had finally kicked in. His golden finger had finally arrived. Little 7. Despite being a robot, had the personality of a child. A little annoying, but it didn't matter because this system was basically a top-tier cheat code. Not only could it help Chu Guang level up to become stronger and survive, but it could also contact Earth. This meant he might still have a chance to return to his original world. And so, Chu Guang quickly accepted his new role as the administrator. This member. The first quest was also sent out immediately after. Chu Guang had to recruit at least 4 pre-registered Wastelander players to receive the reward of a nanocarbon bulletproof vest and 5 progression points. That was the... Meanwhile, back at the men's dormitory on Earth, the young man named Ye Wei was still jaw-dropped in disbelief that a true virtual reality game actually existed. He checked a few more chat groups and was shocked to find that players worldwide... Chu Guang wasn't hyping up the game, but Ye Wei was still skeptical. What kind of RPG could possibly offer a 100% realistic experience? He still thought it was just some elaborate scam. But after Chu Guang sent him the link, Ye Wei's curiosity got the better of him. Who's afraid of who, right? As a college student with a spirit for scientific discovery, he figured why not give it a shot. Ye Wei decisively clicked the pre-order button if it was legit. He planned to build a solid harem in that world with 2 beautiful wives and just live it up until he was old. The next day, Ye Wei went down to the school cafeteria for a meal as usual. After eating his fill, he returned to his dorm and found a new express delivery package waiting for him. When he asked his roommates who sent it, they all said they had no idea. Ye Wei gulped, feeling super tense. Was there a bomb in here? But when he opened the box, he found a helmet inside. Ye Wei's eyes went wide. Did they really send the gaming helmet? He had just pre-ordered it yesterday. He quickly put it on his head and a blinding blue light flashed. Is the game starting now? Just as Ye Wei was getting hyped about a future with his 20 virtual wives, a notification popped up. The game will be activated in exactly 72 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. He screamed in despair, this damn game. I was all ready to meet the ladies. My pants are already off and you're making me wait 3 days? Are you insane? What was Ye Wei screaming about in the middle of the night? That night, the Niu Ma Club was buzzing with activity. Everyone who pre-ordered the game had received their express delivery helmets. Everyone found it incredibly strange because they hadn't even filled out any personal information. Yet the helmets were delivered right to their homes with the packages arriving without anyone noticing. Moreover, there were people in the group from Jinling and people from Jiangcheng 500 kilometers apart who received their helmets at the exact same time. What kind of OP game company is this? Not only do they know our addresses, but this black box tech also transmits directly to our brains through the helmet. At this point, Chu Guang began to explain. First, the virtual reality technology is a trade secret and cannot be disclosed. Second, there are only 4 beta test versions corresponding to the 4 helmets that were sent out. But this equipment is only on loan. Players are strictly forbidden from losing, dismantling, or damaging it. Third, the helmet will be bound to the user's identification info, meaning one helmet can only be registered to one account and used by a player. Hearing this, the guys stopped complaining and obediently waited for the game to officially launch. Chu Guang was also very satisfied with his choice of players. Come to think of it, Chu Guang hadn't contacted any relatives since his grandfather passed away. On Earth, he had been missing for over 5 months. Anyone who knew him probably thought he had kicked the bucket long ago. But Chu Guang hadn't given up on returning back to Earth, so he got his act together and started getting serious about work again. Little 7, our official website is way too basic. Can you add a forum function and a data visualization feature to it? Of course I can. Awaiting your instructions, Master. The initial construction phase requires a lot of manual labor, so male gamers are pretty crucial. Therefore, the official website has to be eye-catching. It's best to feature some S-tier waifu NPCs with insane stats and drop-dead gorgeous looks to pull in more players. Besides, the official website isn't just for players to learn about the game. It's also a way to boost hype and engagement. For example, in the chat rooms, Chu Guang wants to use an AI to pose as a female gamer to chat and interact with the male players. Simps like Ye Wei would definitely be all over that. After laying out the plan, Chu Guang tasked Little Seven with optimizing the website within 3 days. No problem. But, Master, I have a question. Why are we only granting access to 4 players? Didn't our official website get 11 pre-registrations this time? Chu Guang explained that resources are scarce in the wasteland, and right now very few people can afford to conserve food and water. Besides, his admin privileges aren't God mode. He can't just order the players around however he wants. So the more people there are, the easier it is for chaos to break out. For now, it's better to properly train those 4 guys first. Plus, the player quest only needs a KPI of 4 people to be completed. It was then that Chu Guang remembered he had a quest of his own. He immediately opened it and claimed the reward, instantly equipping a layer of carbon nano armor. Wow, this thing is totally OP. It has 100% durability and can effectively absorb the kinetic energy of bullets, dispersing the impact within its durability range, while also resisting a certain degree of piercing damage. With this, he'd feel a bit safer leaving the shelter in the future. By the way, since Chu Guang received 5 reward points, Little Seven also introduced the concept of mystery boxes. Just as the name suggests, they contain surprising unrevealed rewards inside. The administrator can exchange 1 reward point for a basic mystery box, 10 points for an intermediate one, and 100 points for an advanced mystery box. Basic mystery boxes can drop food supplies, intermediate boxes can drop medical supplies, and advanced boxes can drop weapons. Chu Guang started to wonder, should he use his first 5 reward points to open all basic mystery boxes, or should he save up until he has 100 points to exchange for a weapon? Just then, a new quest was updated. Chu Guang checked the requirements. The first quest was to have at least 1 player log into the game with the reward being an active substance extractor. The second quest was to prepare a generator with a power output greater than 10 kilowatts, and the reward was 100 reward points. Chu Guang's eyes lit up. Holy crap, it's really 100 points! He made up his mind then and there. He'd wait until this quest was done to exchange for a weapon. For now, he'd just use those 5 measly points to get all basic mystery boxes. Little Seven received the command and immediately processed the exchange. But when the items dropped before his eyes, Chu Guang was instantly speechless. In front of him were nothing but lollipops and cookies, and the quantities were tiny too. This damn system is so stingy. But looking again, there were only 4 sweets plus a paper scroll. Chu Guang curiously picked it up to take a look. Is this the 5th reward? It was written in the language of this world. Luckily, Chu Guang had learned the basics during his 5 months here. The gist of the content was this: there are no creatures in this world better suited to be guinea pigs than players. They possess a strong sense of curiosity, are brimming with enthusiasm, can face any hardship, and will never back down from a challenge, of course. Most importantly, they can even analyze problems from the administrator's perspective and collectively help the administrator level up. I'm a genius for packaging this setup like a game, the first-generation administrator of Vault 404. Please place this note in the 5th primary hidden box. This is the Easter egg I've left for my successor. Chu Guang held the paper, his hands trembling with rage. What kind of damn Easter egg is this? It's all just a bunch of nonsense. This was clearly a waste of his primary blind box. But, to be honest, to invent such powerful black technology under the conditions of a lost civilization, it seems the previous administrator of this vault was a true genius. Chu Guang became curious about the first-generation administrator, but Xiao Qi didn't have much information on that, because its main program was only activated when he got here. But if he was the first-generation administrator, the database here should have his info right. Xiao Qi caught on quickly. It began searching through the massive data archive. According to the records, more than a century had passed for the Vault 404 database since the previous administrator handed over operational control on October 1st, 2157. On this once thriving planet, a devastating nuclear war had occurred. It raged on for many years, with both sides trying their best to completely wipe out the other. As a result, everything on the planet's surface was destroyed, thus beginning the era of the wasteland and decay. Master, the data indicates that during the long nuclear winter that followed, civilization was almost completely wiped out. But there's no detailed information about the first administrator. It seems it's been deleted. Xiao Qi despot, having no hair, scratched its head in embarrassment. Oh well. Chu Guang didn't push for more answers. He decided to hold on to the note for now. With nearly 3 days until the players officially logged in, the main concern was the lack of food and water in the vault. So he decided to venture outside one more time. Chu Guang promised Xiao Qi he would return in 3 days at the latest, or even by tomorrow night if things went smoothly. He didn't want to face the dangers, but as the administrator, he had to collect food and water for the players. And so at 8 in the morning, Chu Guang ventured out once more. After analyzing the situation, he realized the path from Vault 404 back to Bay Street was extremely dangerous. The starving two-headed hyenas would definitely not let any prey that wandered into their territory get away. However, on his way back to the survivors' camp, Chu Guang did in fact run into the two-headed hyenas, and there were 2 of them. According to the first survivors, the two-headed hyena is a mutated creature caused by gamma radiation. Its combat power wasn't that great. So with a weapon in hand, Chu Guang was confident he could take down both hyenas. With that in mind, he picked up a sharp iron rod from the roadside. Of course, that was only a last resort if he got spotted. Otherwise, it was best to avoid them and not stir up any trouble. And why is that? Because these hyenas are incredibly smart creatures. They usually send 2 individuals out to scout ahead first, just like the mutant cockroaches. If you spot one, there are likely countless more of its kind lurking in the shadows, and any mistake could lead to massive losses. It could even cost you your life. So, Chu Guang held his breath, telling himself to be as cautious as possible. After sneaking past 2 hyenas, Chu Guang successfully reached the settlement on Street B. His destination was the recycling station to trade for some chips. Chips are the currency in this wasteland used to exchange for food and other necessities. Today, Chu Guang managed to get 3 chips. The owner of the recycling shop, Old Man Charlie, complained that the adhesive he brought was trash, so that's all he was willing to pay. "Want to buy anything? I've got a new shipment in. Got any guns?" Old Man Charlie just laughed and said no. And even if he did, Chu Guang couldn't afford one. Instead, the old man advised Chu Guang to stock up on food and supplies soon, before their prices skyrocket for the winter. When Charlie mentioned that Chu Guang was stunned, "Winter is coming already. I thought you got here 5 months ago." Then it makes sense you've never experienced it. Around this time last year, the temperature had already started to drop. This year, winter is expected to arrive early. We might even see snow in October. With winter approaching, it means the monsters are also getting more active to prepare for the cold season. According to Old Man Charlie, this will be the season where you can't tell if what's under the thick snow is recyclable junk or the fangs of a mutant rat. And when winter arrives, the merchant caravans will stop coming because the weather is just too harsh. Even if you scavenge something valuable, you'll just have to hoard it at home and wait until next spring to sell it. But you could also risk a trip to Boulder City. It's about 10 kilometers from here. Over there, the market stays open even during winter. Charlie's long-winded explanation gave Chu Guang a headache, but he was used to it. After all, it was thanks to Charlie that he had adapted to life in this wasteland so quickly. Charlie was originally a refugee who was later sold into slavery. The mayor of Street B paid his ransom and gave him the job of dealing with the scavengers. Charlie was a very knowledgeable man. If the world hadn't gone to hell, he might have been a doctor or an engineer, not a recycling shop owner, appraising junk for a living. Chu Guang returned to his own house on Street B. He took out his entire fortune and began to calculate carefully. With the additional 3 chips, Chu Guang's savings were now enough to cover the initial costs for the shelter, because that bunker was in desperate need of repairs. Plus, Chu Guang needed money for a few other tasks as well. He planned to have the players gather materials to repair the nursing home's walls, so he had to buy tools first. He also needed to stock up on food because once a clone is activated by a player's consciousness link, it becomes the equivalent of a normal living person and needs to consume food to replenish its energy. If these players get hungry, they might do some unbelievable things and even lose control. Chu Guang calculated silently. He needed to prepare at least enough food for 5 adults for 1 week. 2 meals a day, 1 piece of bread per meal, that's 70 pieces a week. Alternatively, he could feed them green wheat produced by the nearby farms. It only costs 3 chips for 1 kilogram, and 5 kilograms is enough for 1 person for 2 weeks. He decided to go with that plan for now. Chu Guang left his house, and as he closed the door, he accidentally bumped into a child. The little girl looked flustered, and Chu Guang immediately recognized her as Xiao, the youngest daughter of the nearby Yu family. "Big brother, I heard noises in your house and was worried a bad guy had gotten in. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd check on things ahem." "Thanks. No problem. Whenever you go out, you can count on me to watch your place. After all, I've got nothing better to do." Xiao flashed a brilliant smile, but Chu Guang put on a face like the boogeyman trying to scare kids. "Kids shouldn't get too close to strangers. You never know when you'll run into a bad guy." Xiao was scared stiff, but she was still stubborn, retorting that she wasn't a kid. In fact, back home, her older brother was always nagging that she was already old enough to be married off. Besides, she could tell Chu Guang wasn't a bad guy. The last time Xiao was starving, he even bought her some soup. Hearing this, Chu Guang was taken aback. He vaguely remembered giving the starving kid a bowl of soup once. So that's why Xiao was always lurking around his house. At this thought, Chu Guang's annoyance melted away, and he pulled out a lollipop for Xiao, watching her enjoy it. Chu Guang let out a long sigh. What a poor kid. If this were on Earth, she'd probably still be a carefree student, without a single worry in the world. It was Xiao's first time ever having a lollipop, and the strange sweet flavor made her incredibly excited. "This is so yummy, I'm glad you like it. It's called a lollipop." Chu Guang chuckled, and seeing him smile made Xiao even happier. This was the first time she had ever seen Chu Guang smile. "Hey, you should try a bite. This lollipop is super sweet." Xiao stood on her tiptoes, bringing her face close to Chu Guang's, a move that made him blush involuntarily. Chu Guang just pushed her hat down over her eyes. "All right, stop messing around. I'm busy now, so be good and watch the house for me. Okay." By the time Xiao fixed her crooked hat, Chu Guang had already vanished, but she still shouted after him, promising to guard his house well. Chu Guang made it back to the shelter without a hitch, where he and Xiao Qi waited for the next 3 days. This was when the players finally connected to the game. Ye and 3 other players logged in simultaneously. Ye was a perception class player. The current game was the Maiden's 10-night common enemy. Joining him was a strength class player named Time Flies, an agility class player named The Future is Long, and finally an intelligence class player named Typhoon Number 8. To be honest, these guys' in-game names are a total mouthful. Typhoon Number 8 remarked while cleaning his glasses. "This experience is totally immersive. You just put on that helmet and log in and it feels like you've been ISEKAI'd to another world." Ye chimed in. Totally. If it weren't for the bizarre scenery, I wouldn't even believe this was a VR game." Suddenly, the door before them slid open, revealing Chu Guang and Xiao Qi. "The war is over and our world has been completely transformed. But because of this, players, it is time for us to rebuild human civilization. I'm the administrator here, codenamed Chu Guang. This is my assistant Xiao Qi if you have any questions. You can ask him." All 4 players were gobsmacked, a reaction Chu Guang had fully anticipated. He just didn't expect that immediately after all 4 of them would start firing off questions at once, creating a headache-inducing racket. Whoa, is this administrator an NPC? He looks totally photorealistic. Administrator, where's Brother Guang? What's our quest? How do we log out? And by the way, can you change your gender in this world? Silence. Chu Guang impatiently pulled out an old notebook. To log out of the game, just lie back down in that training cabin. Now, as for everything else, all you have to do is stay quiet and read this shelter's resident handbook, which clearly lays out all the rules you need to follow. First, the administrator's orders are absolute, and all players must obey them unconditionally. Second, for any players who break the rules, the admin will use a forced sleep protocol, which means you'll be force logged out of the game or hit with a login ban as a final resort. Third, the admin has the final say on the interpretation of all the above terms. The player, the Maiden's common enemy, read this far and was all, "What the heck? This admin has so much power, he can totally do things that would ruin another player's game experience. Typhoon number 8 agreed, thinking that Chu Guang was not someone to be trifled with. Players like them needed to be extremely careful. Just then, Chu Guang and Little Seven, who had been leading the way, suddenly turned around. 200 years after the end of the war, you're luckier than 12 billion other people just to be standing here. I need you all to recognize the gravity of the situation and then make your declaration under the banner of the People's Federation to rebuild our homeland. They all responded in unison. Chu Guang then led the 4 of them to a forest on the northern outskirts of Qingquan City, which was far enough from the nuclear crater that they didn't have to worry about excessive gamma radiation. The first quest he gave this group of players was to grab an axe and gather enough wood, because the sanatorium was about to be repaired and an outpost would be built on its ruins. The 4 of them grabbed their axes and shouted slogans enthusiastically, looking totally hyped for their new life in this world. Chu Guang didn't forget to warn them not to stray too far, since running into monsters was a real possibility. If that happened, they were to retreat immediately, no questions asked. After that, Chu Guang ordered Little Seven to head back to the 3rd floor of the nursing home and find a good vantage point to keep an eye on these noobs, while he returned to the control center to check on his rewards. The first problem popped up almost immediately, the massive difference in the player's physical stats. Time Flies was ripped and had already gathered a ton of wood, but Typhoon number 8 could barely even swing his axe. Yi Wei also felt way stronger than in the real world, but he thought it was a total waste to be this jacked without any women around. This guy seriously has a one-track mind. He started daydreaming again. Hey guys, you think there's a chance we'll find some cute elf waifus in this forest? Heh heh. But Time Flies immediately shut down Ye Wei's fantasy. The setting here is a wasteland 200 years in the future, which reminded him of a documentary called Return to Chernobyl. I'll bet you there are no elf waifus here, but there are definitely zombies with parasitic fungi or something even more terrifying. Typhoon number 8 and the future is long chimed in with a few more warnings reminding him what Chu Guang had said. They weren't allowed to stray too far from the nursing home. If they disobeyed, they could get force logged out or even get a permaban. Right now, all they had was a single axe each. If they actually ran into a monster, they'd be nothing but free EXP. That was enough to scare Ye Wei straight. His fantasy of beautiful elf waifus vanished into thin air. All right, fine, I won't try it. I won't go looking. And so he obediently went back to grinding wood. But deep down, Ye Wei was still silently protesting. He had no idea that Chu Guang was the same brother Guang who recommended the game in the group chat. Plus, in Ye Wei's mind, always assumed Chu Guang was just an NPC, so he was even more reluctant to listen. But since it was a free-to-play game anyway, he figured he'd get used to it first and could always stir up trouble later. Perhaps because of this rebellious attitude, Ye Wei was quickly hit with some instant karma, as a giant black bird appeared out of nowhere and suddenly swooped in to attack him. He was so terrified that he dropped his axe and fell flat on his back, gasping, "Hey, Mr. Monster, can't you go find someone else to attack?" Back at the nursing home, Xiao Qi saw this happening and frantically ran like mad to find Chu Guang, who was currently focused on studying the instruction manual for the active substance extractor. This machine was the reward for completing the player recruitment quest. It used animal carcasses as raw materials, with vertebrates being a key component, and primates and mammals being the absolute best. Chu Guang was thrilled with this machine in hand. He could finally start gathering materials for the synthetic clones. "Master, we have a problem. Xiao Qi rushed over out of breath to report that a giant black bird was attacking the players. Hearing this, Chu Guang's expression darkened. Why would a giant blackbird appear here? Meanwhile, the other 3 players managed to rush over and help Ye Wei, temporarily pulling him away from the monster's talons. Long Road ahead suggested that this thing was probably a mutant beast. "How would you know?" Ye Wei asked, still shaken from the attack. "It's in the lore." On the official website, mutant beasts are variants created by gamma rays or other types of radiation. There's lore on the official site. No way it was just a blank page. Only used for signing up, right? It was like that before, but Chu Guang had Xiao Qi upgrade it yesterday. It now has pretty detailed information on common mutant beasts. Too bad Ye Wei didn't read it, but that didn't matter. What he cared about most right now was how to fight back against this monster. Don't be afraid. If the enemy doesn't move, we don't move. Timeflies shouted, but then the three of them immediately bolted and hid in the bushes, leaving only Storm Signal 8 standing all alone before the monster's claws. Do you guys really have to bait your own teammate like that? He was seeing red with anger, but the other three just pretended not to notice. Just then a rock came flying from out of nowhere and hit the monster. The four of them looked at each other, and before they could figure out who threw it, a second rock came flying. Who else could it be but Chu Guang? The blackbird identified the source of the rocks and immediately changed its flight path, heading straight for him. Chu Guang gripped the sharpened iron rod in his hand and scoffed. Humph, a beast is still just a beast even if you grow another head. Your IQ is no match for a human's. He braced himself and then hurled the iron rod. The throw was so powerful it pierced straight through the monster's throat. Yewei's crew was completely stunned with their jaws on the floor. Holy crap. This NPC is totally OP. The blackbird immediately dropped like a stone. After that incident, the four new players became much more well-behaved. They all unanimously agreed that Chu Guang was an amazing game master. That evening, Chu Guang treated the players to a meal of the mutated hawk. Yewei was a bit hesitant. Is this crow really edible? You can absolutely eat it. Once it's cooked, I'll let you know which parts are inedible. This creature is actually just a hawk. Yewei couldn't believe his eyes. How could a hawk get that big? Chu Guang simply explained that it was due to the gamma rays. It's not just monsters that pose a threat, but also viruses, bacteria, genetic weapons, and many other factors that have collectively created this desolate, post-apocalyptic world. Chu Guang explained while silently lamenting that if only they had some salt, the flavor would be even better. However, in a city like this, finding salt to preserve food seemed a bit unrealistic. This bird is so massive, how can we possibly eat it all? Can we store the leftovers in the fridge? Chu Guang chuckled at this naive thought, because in this place, even the mayor's fortress only had a single refrigerator. After hearing this, Yewei's imagination started running wild just thinking about becoming the mayor and having a house full of beautiful maids. The thought made his heart pound and his legs tremble. Snap out of it, dude. Stop daydreaming. Timeflies grabbed his shoulders and shook him like crazy. Meanwhile, the Future is Long was concerned about a different issue. Excuse me, Mr. Administrator, may I ask how much wood we need? As much as you can chop? Chu Guang replied decisively. The whole group immediately deflated. These players weren't like him. They could log off at any time and didn't feel the urgent pressure to survive. So, Chu Guang came up with a meta-strategy. He set a price and reward points for each log, and those points could be exchanged for limited quantity rewards. For example, a roasted bird thigh cost 5 points. 2 roasted bird legs cost 8 points. Hearing this, the players started drooling uncontrollably. Then they bolted straight for the forest to grind for more logs before dinner. By the time it got late, all 4 of them were completely exhausted. Chu Guang, based on the criteria he had set earlier, announced that for this quest, they had earned over 2,000 contribution points. Among them, the old-timer Timeflies contributed the most points, being a strength-build player after all. Therefore, the old-timer received 2 whole bird thighs. Yewei and the player, the Future is Long, had the same score, and were both satisfied with receiving 2 wings each. Only Typhoon number 8, whose physical strength was too low, got the lowest score. He let out a gut-wrenching sigh. The other 3 could only gather around to console him and share their roasted bird meat to lift his spirits. Chu Guang felt incredibly lucky that this blackbird had appeared out of nowhere. Having so much loot made it easy to keep the players happy, because if he had asked them to chop 100 trees for just 2 lollipops, he was afraid they would have split him in half. Everyone's contribution points can be viewed on the game's official website, besides exchanging them for rewards. They can also be used to buy revival coins. The revival coins will take 3 days to process. The 3 players happily discussed how to best use their contribution points, while only Typhoon number 8 sulked gloomily in a corner. How could a weakling like him ever dream of hoarding enough points to spend lavishly? Chu Guang actually wanted to be generous and give them a ton of reward points to spend, but he didn't have many himself. Besides, these players weren't like him, so they wouldn't understand the local language. With that in mind, Chu Guang began to consider developing a translation tool to solve the communication barrier. Just then, the Future is Long started up again with his endless stream of questions. Oh, right, Mr. Administrator. I noticed our shelter has no electricity. Why don't we try to get a generator? Chu Guang explained that they couldn't get another generator because if any of the four, whoever could solve this problem, he promised a special reward. Hearing this, Typhoon number 8's eyes lit up. Holy cow. His time to shine had finally come, but the clueless Ye Wei offered an incredibly simple yet ineffective idea. Why not just run a wire from the ground up? Chu Guang sighed. This guy's IQ was way too low. No wire was that long, and the shelter's power wasn't infinite, so even if it worked temporarily, the long-term problem would remain unsolved. It might even create an even bigger hidden disaster. By 5 in the afternoon, Chu Guang sent them back since it was getting late, for although it wasn't dark there yet, it was almost dawn in China. After they left, Chu Guang started thinking about recruiting more players, specifically those who were free and didn't work during the day, or players living in different time zones, otherwise guarding the base alone at night wouldn't be safe. Dear Administrator, the player's health check report has been updated. Would you like to take a look? There are health check reports too, every time a player logs out. The nurturing pod normally performs a scan on the player inside, and their bodily functions are recorded. It even retains a certain amount of embryonic stem cells for backup recording the development progress of their gene sequence. Chu Guang got a headache listening to Little Seven's explanation. Hold on, what the heck is gene sequence development progress? Each copy is synthesized from a different DNA, and the gene sequence is the number of different DNAs, which is basically the character's class in this game. A strength-focused gene sequence is enhanced first, granting greater power, and leaning towards boosting the strength stat. Chu Guang was still a bit fuzzy on the details, but got the general idea. No wonder Time Flies Fast's power was on a whole other level. Seeing that Chu Guang was starting to get it, Little Seven continued to explain the development progress. It refers to the expression level of special segments in the gene chain, usually calculated as a percentage. This development progress is equivalent to a character's level in a game. For example, if the development progress reaches 100%, all of the living bodies, that's when the body reaches its most perfect state. But that is nearly impossible. Today, the development progress of all 4 players was below 1%. Specifically, the player Time Flies Fast had a development progress of 0.3%, while the other 3 were stuck at 0.1% according to Little Seven's research. As long as their survival instincts are constantly stimulated while they train their bodies, this value can be continuously increased. Chu Guang was very satisfied. It seemed he needed to organize specialized training regimens tailored to each person's gene sequence next. Back in the real world at the Vocational Institute of Jinling University, the player Typhoon number 8, who had an intelligence-type gene sequence, had just woken up after logging out. His real name was Yan Feng, and he was also a university professor. He was still hung up on the generator problem and planned to consult a colleague during his lunch break today. At 12 noon, Yan Feng went to the cafeteria as usual, where Professor Wang was already waiting. His handsome appearance and gentle personality made him very popular with the female students. Yan Feng, however, was a complete exception. Due to his rigid personality, the students had even nicknamed him Robot Yan. Today, during lunch, Professor Wang was pretty surprised to see Yan Feng completely buried in a book about power generators. I've been doing some research on a post-apocalyptic novel lately. Yan Feng began deliberately downplaying it because he was afraid his colleague would mock him for being a grown man obsessed with a VR game. I was wondering how survivors in an apocalypse would solve the problem of electricity. This isn't what you wanted to ask my expert opinion on this morning, is it? It is. Oh, come on. You're taking something from a novel this seriously. Professor Wang's demeanor suddenly shifted and he leaned in close to Yan Feng. Or could it be that you're actually waiting for the end of the world? Outwardly, Yan Feng remained calm, but inwardly his mind was in turmoil. What the heck? How did Professor Wang guess that spot on aren't there only 4 slots for the closed beta tests? Don't tell me he's one of the other 3 players. Seeing Yan Feng get so tense, Professor Wang burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, you're way too serious, I was just messing with you. Yan Feng breathed a sigh of relief. That little prank nearly gave him a heart attack. It seemed Professor Wang really had nothing to do with Wasteland Online, but the issue was that the professor was only into cultivation novels. He had very little interest in the post-apocalyptic genre, so he wanted Yan Feng to give him a lore drop on the book's setting. Yanfeng thought for a moment and began to recount the events from Wasteland Online. When Professor Wang learned the setting was post-nuclear war, he grew thoughtful for a long while. That is indeed a bit of a pickle because any unprotected electronic equipment would be severely damaged by the electromagnetic pulse or EMP from a nuclear blast, and the more sophisticated the device, the less likely it is to survive. Are the backup diesel generators for residential areas or restaurants considered too sophisticated? Yanfeng asked eagerly, already ruling out the possibility of them being scavenged. If they haven't been maintained for a long time, they'll definitely be broken. Plus, there's the fuel issue. You can't always count on finding gas at a gas station. Professor Wang pondered for a moment. It's definitely a tough nut to crack, but it's not impossible. Generally speaking, cars have alternators that can be salvaged. As long as the rotor is spinning, it can generate a stable 12-volt DC current, which is usable after a few repairs. For small-scale power generation, like for lighting, 12 volts is more than enough. And if you install an inverter, you can convert the DC power into a 240-volt AC source, which means you can power even more electronics. Seeing Yanfeng pull out a notebook to jot things down, Professor Wang started sweating bullets. It's just a novel, do you really need to go this hard? He'd always heard that the people in the physics department were a bit off, especially the eccentric robot-like Yanfeng, who was never seen cracking a smile. Professor Wang explained for a while, and once he felt he'd covered the basics, he had to leave for his afternoon class. The female students saw their chance and immediately swarmed him. "Professor, your explanation was amazing, but there are still so many things I don't understand." Me too. Me too. Professor Wang was like a rock star mobbed by fans. This persistent group of students insisted on getting his help and wouldn't even consider asking Yanfeng. Just then, Yanfeng's phone suddenly started buzzing like crazy. Could this be a game notification? He pulled it out and saw a message from Long Road Ahead, whose real name was Fang Chang. Yanfeng opened the message, and holy crap. It was a massive wall of text. All of it was Fang Chang's review of his gameplay experience in Wasteland Online. This guy was a hardcore gamer, a real pro who just gamed all day and didn't have to work. But to have logged out just a short while ago and already cranked out such a detailed review was insanely productive. Meanwhile, in Fang's room, Zhang was still completely absorbed in his new career as a reviewer, but just writing about it wasn't enough for him. He went live on stream to break it all down for his fans. So far since starting the game, we've encountered two NPCs. The human NPC is named Chu Guang, who is the base administrator, and the other NPC is his assistant robot, Xiao Qi. Their AI is incredibly advanced, allowing for deep and varied interactions with players. I suspect the NPCs have some kind of hidden affinity settings, but that's still unconfirmed. Additionally, Fang Chang believes the game has a built-in neural protection mechanism for the brain, preventing players from experiencing overwhelming pain. Of course, this could also just be the body's own self-preservation kicking in. Basically, getting hit on the hand with a rock doesn't hurt, but pinching yourself stings a little. Fang Chang hopes the game becomes more user-friendly, like allowing players to freely adjust the sensitivity settings for their various senses. Because personally, he's totally satisfied with the current 5 senses immersion and enjoys it immensely. But he's sure there are players who might not like that level of realism. The comment section was flooded with countless questions. Some asked what happens if you get injured in the game, while others wondered when Fang Chang would livestream it. But Fang Chang didn't dare answer right away since he needed to ask the admin Brother Guang first. Speaking of Brother Guang, Fang Chang suddenly remembered something. By the way, Brother Guang, if you're watching this stream, your humble little brother has a request. I'm begging the devs to let players freely choose their character's gender. Please. Back in the Wasteland, Chu Guang was indeed watching the live stream. Xiao Qi had just reported that the number of pre-registrations was skyrocketing. But Chu Guang wasn't in a hurry to grant access to new players. He was quite interested in Fang Chang, because that kid was a former top 200 player on the Asian server and the tournament champion of a major RPG. He was pretty famous for his live streams, had given them free publicity for Wasteland, and even managed to draw out the lurkers who never post on social media. Chu Guang was even added as an admin in the new Ma Club. It seemed like for the next announcement he couldn't just send a text. He'd have to say a few words. Chu Guang activated his voice changer and sent a few voice chats to the group. He dropped some major intel for the Neuma Club about changes in the closed beta, especially regarding the game's NPCs. Specifically, the NPCs now have favorability ratings with players, and a player's actions will directly affect that NPC's attitude towards them. When the affinity with a key NPC is high enough, players will not only get extra rewards, but can also trigger hidden quests to unlock secret job classes. Hearing about hidden classes and secret quests made the 4 veteran players' eyes light up. Chu Guang also praised Fang Chang's review, calling it excellent, and advised him to post it on the official website forums. Fang Chang was absolutely ecstatic. He nearly jumped for joy at being praised by Brother Guang. After handling that, Chu Guang turned off the voice changer and let out a lazy sigh. It seems the first-time player experience of linking with a clone is pretty seamless. Suddenly, he recalled Fang Chang's review and had a realization, hey Xiao Qi, if the players can connect to the clones in the training pods, then so can I, right? After all, I don't need that gaming helmet to travel through time. Little 7 ran a check, but its database had no information related to Chu Guang's genetic sequence. This meant he couldn't connect to the training pod because his genetic sequence was missing. Seeing Little 7 looking downcast, Chu Guang quickly comforted it. He then asked it to use his physical examination results and the attribute conversion formula left by the first-generation administrator to calculate his various stats. Little 7 handled this task in a flash. It finished processing the data and projected it onto a virtual window. Chu Guang was currently at level 5, and his base stats included 8 points in strength, 6 points in agility, 6 points in constitution, and 7 points in perception. Chu Guang marveled to himself. The second-generation administrator was a real genius. The functional data from over 120 complex clones had all been converted into just 5 base stats. Chu Guang then had Little 7 pull up the stat sheets for the 4 closed beta players. It was quite surprised because Chu Guang's 5 base stats were a whole tier higher than the players. Chu Guang started to wonder the data was solid, but his genetic sequence wasn't in the database. Could he be some kind of anomaly that existed between the 2 previous generations of administrators? While he was lost in thought, the reward for the new player guide quest arrived. It was 10 reward points. Chu Guang now had enough points to get a mid-tier mystery box, and being the curious type, he decided to cash it in right away. He silently prayed 1,000,000,000 times, "Please don't be a bottle of cough syrup." After a tense moment, the system awarded Chu Guang a muscle cell enhancement potion, which permanently increased muscle strength. Chu Guang breathed a sigh of relief. He wasn't sure if it would actually work, but it was definitely better than some lung tonic. He picked up the vial. It looked like a syringe, but didn't have a needle. Chu Guang pressed it against his bicep and then threw a few punches. Is that it? It feels like nothing changed at all. Maybe this potion is expired. Dear Administrator, please be patient for a moment. Despite what Little 7 said, Chu Guang was still convinced the potion was expired. He was about to curse out the system again when his body suddenly began to ache and go numb. Chu Guang felt as if a small electric current had shot straight through his heart. What was happening? Chu Guang felt his entire body surge with power, but only for about 2 seconds. Then his entire body felt completely drained of energy. Seriously, what a trash system. Chu Guang couldn't feel any distinct changes in his body at all. He quickly asked Little 7 to run another detailed health scan, as both internally and externally. Little 7 once again displayed Chu Guang's information, showing his development progress was still at level 5. However, his strength and constitution stats had each increased by 1 point, thanks to the permanent muscle strength enhancement potion. Oh dear master. You now possess twice the strength of an average adult male. Little 7 exclaimed in awe. An average untrained adult male typically has a strength stat and other stats around 5 points. But now Chu Guang's strength stat was at 9. It looked like that potion wasn't a total dud after all. It was now 4 o'clock in the morning in the Wasteland. He mentally calculated that the players would likely be logging back on in about an hour and a half. So Chu Guang had Little 7 start making preparations while he went to check out the new batch of quests that had just dropped. There were a ton of them yesterday. There was only 1, but today that number had jumped to 20, though they were all side quests. The main quest's 100-point reward still hasn't been triggered, likely because the prerequisites haven't been met yet. The new batch of quests that came in are daily quests, meaning they will refresh at a set time every day. Chu Guang did a quick calculation and the total reward points were pretty solid, but if he tried to grind them all himself, he would definitely burn out. Therefore, Chu Guang was considering using some contribution points to incentivize the players to do the work for him. But these daily quests weren't as crucial as the main quest after all. Living without electricity felt like being back in the Stone Age. Chu Guang felt that this situation couldn't drag on, but just sitting around doing nothing wasn't going to lead to a solution. The best course of action now was to select from the newly registered players and see if they were worthy of being granted access. Yesterday's reservations were at 25, and today they've already jumped to 35. Chu Guang laughed out loud. It seemed all that hype he generated in the new Ma Club yesterday really paid off. But in the long run, to recruit even more players, he would probably need a new promotion method. This was a huge headache for Chu Guang because running ads was completely unrealistic. The official Wasteland website wasn't even registered in China, and the server probably didn't even exist on Earth. Even though the current 4 closed beta testers were extremely satisfied. Once the traffic is directed to a larger group, a massive wave of low-quality users would flood in and cause trouble. Chu Guang got a headache just thinking about casual players joining only to complain about being hungry or how ugly the outfits were. Therefore, Chu Guang came up with a plan. He intended to have Xiao Qi customize the reservation process to be a bit more complex, specifically requiring players to register an account and leave a contact number and shipping address. This way, players who weren't truly invested would be filtered out for providing incomplete information. He also sent a questionnaire to the new Ma Club to be included on the pre-registration page. Through it, players could set their preferences for the 5 basic attributes: strength, agility, constitution, perception, and intelligence. Meanwhile, on Earth, a young woman was getting absolutely crushed by deadlines. She was the rare female member of the new Ma Club. She was also the director of a fashion design company. Her name was Ye, and recently she'd been too swamped with designing a fashion show to have any time for gaming. However, the group chat had been blowing up these past few days, which piqued her curiosity, and clicking on the information about Wasteland Online made her very intrigued. At first, she was skeptical because what kind of game in the world could possibly offer a 100% realistic experience? But after reading Fang Cheng's review, she started to waver. Even a pro gamer like him had to follow Brother Guang's lead. It seemed this game was actually worth checking out. She clicked on the pre-registration link. The system immediately presented a questionnaire to determine the player's strengths through the 5 basic attributes. Specifically, strength was a representation of bodily tissues like muscles and bones, and it represented the player's base carry weight, the damage they could deal in melee combat, or the distance a player could throw a ranged weapon. Second was agility. This corresponded to reflex nerves, representing the player's reaction speed as well as motor coordination and other physical data. In practical terms, a player with higher agility could more easily dodge attacks in combat. The next attribute was constitution, which was manifested by the player's vitality and recovery ability. This primarily manifests in recovering lost health and resistance to environmental factors. Fourth is intelligence. It mainly affects the player's learning ability and the recovery speed of their mental state. Additionally, this attribute also directly impacts compatibility with neural access devices. Specifically, characters with high intelligence can operate more neural access devices simultaneously. And finally, there's perception, which represents insight and intuition. Players with a high value in this stat will be more sensitive to crises and can more easily detect hidden clues or traps. After reading that wall of text, she felt completely bored, thinking this game didn't seem special at all. But scrolling down a bit, she saw an announcement for additional content that said something like, if players are not satisfied with their character's appearance, they can consider plastic surgery or even a full prosthetic body conversion. This feature will be added to the game soon. A beautiful female character popped into her mind. Yes, plastic surgery, body modification. Now these are the hot new topics and styles in today's fashion world. Inspiration suddenly flooded her mind, giving her the design motivation she needed while drowning in deadlines. Because of this, she decided to pre-order the game right then and there. Wasteland Online, here I come, after filling out all the information. The girl was filled with hope, eager to experience the game and find new inspiration for her clothing designs. Chu Guang was pleased to see the number of pre-orders growing, but that wasn't the most important issue right now. It was finally 6 o'clock. It should be time for those 4 guys to log back in. Xiao Qi displayed their attribute panels one by one. Each had their own strengths, but it seemed no one was completely satisfied with their stat sheet. The strangest was Yan Feng. 7 points in intelligence, but only 3 in strength. In the real world, you'd call that a lopsided build, wouldn't you? Suddenly, Ye Wei clutched his stomach, his face turning pale. He lunged at Xiao Qi like a madman, asking, "Where's the bathroom?" scaring the poor thing to death. But unfortunately, the shelter only had training cabins on level B1. There were no other living facilities whatsoever. Ye Wei was also a perception-based player with very strong awareness, so his current urge to go was probably as urgent as it would be in real life. Seeing Ye Wei looking like he was about to eat Xiao Qi alive, Fang Cheng and Lao Bai, the player known as QuickTime hurriedly pulled him away. The strength of someone desperately needing the restroom is truly something else. Luckily, Lao Bai had a strength stat of 7, which was just enough to pull him away. "Are you crazy? That's going to tank our affinity with the NPC." Ye Wei felt like he was at his breaking point. Just then, Chu Guang appeared and shouted loudly, "No more noise. Everyone, fall in line immediately." His military-like demeanor was undeniable, and all 4 of them, including Ye Wei, who was about to burst, immediately formed a neat single-file line. Chu Guang chuckled to himself. Yesterday he had mentioned that building good affinity with an NPC could unlock hidden quests or secret classes. So today, all 4 of them were listening to his every word to curry favor. It seemed he'd have to keep up this serious persona for now. Chu Guang, with a stone-cold expression, began to brief them on the new mission. To avoid messing with the next phase of the plan, they absolutely had to finish constructing the outpost tower on the surface before winter arrived. Food, water, and fuel also needed to be stockpiled. At the same time, they also had to build defensive fortifications and surface shelters. The other 3 were super hyped about the new quests that just dropped. Only Ye Wei's face grew increasingly grim. Those were just the immediate tasks. "If no one has any more questions, then..." Before Chu Guang could finish his sentence, Ye Wei yelled out, "Hold on, Administrator. I gotta take a dump." Chu Guang froze. He had only ever thought about surviving in the wasteland, never about how to actually develop it. Later on, as the player base grew, things like eating, drinking, and handling waste would become a massive issue. Chu Guang made a disgusted face, then motioned for Ye Wei to follow him. "Hold on, you're walking too fast." "Administrator, I'm about to crap my pants." Now it wasn't just Chu Guang. The other 3 in the room also had looks of utter disgust. Getting the runs just from playing a game, Yan Feng silently thought to himself. This game's realism is on another level. He wasn't sure if there was something off with the eagle they ate yesterday, but right after Ye Wei Fang Chang started getting a stomachache too. As a result, the 4 of them had a major bro-bonding moment by taking a massive dump together. They were all so severely dehydrated they could barely stand. And to make matters worse, the whole crew accidentally used stinging nettles for toilet paper. The result was, as soon as they finished their business, they were hit with a new problem. Their backsides were on fire. Chu Guang had actually wanted to tell them to use moss, but all 4 of them had such an emergency that they sprinted out the second the shelter door opened. They didn't even listen to a word he said. After this whole disaster, the 4 of them collectively made a desperate plea to Chu Guang. They needed to build a latrine at the base. Lao Bai suggested they could build a large septic tank underneath it and then compost the waste with wood shavings and add straw to make fertilizer. Chu Guang thought this was a pretty solid idea since it was similar to how the Brown farm near Bet Street operated. Fang Chang also chimed in, saying they could mix the waste with organic garbage and seal it up to create a biogas digester. Then anaerobic bacteria would convert it all into flammable methane gas. The resulting biogas could be used to create methane fuel cells, meaning they could literally build a power plant that runs on poop. Chu Guang then recalled that there was a similar digester near Brown Farm. It seemed they also collected manure to generate power. These players were actually pretty sharp, so in theory they could totally build their very own power plant. "That's a good idea worth considering," Chu Guang said, acting all casual about it. But on the inside, he was totally stoked. The contributions from these 4 were far exceeding his expectations. He definitely picked the right crew. This was the moment for a university professor like Yan Feng to flex his knowledge. He was the only one who spotted the issue with handling raw sewage. The only real challenge in building the latrine and biogas digester was the need for plenty of materials for sealing and gas containment. But Chu Guang had a perfect solution for this, because while the wasteland lacked many things, trash wasn't one of them, especially plastic water bottles and garbage bags. Most wasteland survivors were terrified of the toxic fumes from burning plastic, so they never did it. At most, they'd only use them as fire starters. Therefore, they could gather tons of plastic bottles and bags by carefully scavenging in the nearby cities and suburbs. Chu Guang immediately updated the notice board in the shelter. The new quest: collect bottles and plastic bags. The 4 players looked at each other and let out an emotional sigh. Damn, the NPCs in this game are hyper-realistic. He can analyze the situation in real time and generate a new quest on the fly. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the NPC actually smiled when we came up with that idea. Yewei's crew was super hyped, but Nam Fong remained lost in thought until he finally raised his hand resolutely, saying he had a solution for the generator and wanted to speak. He suggested looking for car wrecks nearby because most cars have an alternator on board. Southeast of Westland Park, there was indeed a parking lot, but Chu Guang had already swung by to loot armor and found nothing worth salvaging. Even so, Nam Fong insisted on trying to search it one more time, just in case he could find a working alternator, which would mean all their surface outposts would finally have electricity. Seeing how determined Nam Fong was, Chu Guang didn't have the heart to crush his hopes, but he laid down one non-negotiable condition. This wasteland is crawling with all sorts of mutants and grotesque beasts. You've encountered them before. The world outside is no joke, so if you're dead set on going, then I need to pick someone to go with you. Lao Bai, Fang Chong, and Ye Wei all gulped hard. Hey, a high-difficulty quest like this is the GM trying to assign it to me. As it turned out, the person Chu Guang chose was Ye Wei. He didn't dare turn down such a vital mission. Lao Bai was just confused, since his combat power was obviously higher. That made him a better fit to protect Nam Fong, so why on earth did Chu Guang pick Ye Wei? But Fang Chang figured that if the NPC made a decision, he must have his reasons, so they all agreed to go along with it without a single complaint. Chu Guang gave the 2 of them some basic gear and a map, but when they arrived, the atmosphere of the place gave Nam Fong the creeps. Damn it, so this is why Chu Guang said there was nothing useful here. These old cars have clearly been stripped clean of anything valuable. But Nam Fong refused to give up, feeling it would be a total waste to come all this way and leave empty-handed. So Nam Fong began meticulously inspecting each car, but his stamina was just too low. And since Ye Wei was young and clueless, their teamwork was a bit of a struggle. Eventually, with Ye Wei's help, Nam Fong managed to pop the hood of a car, but while he found the engine, the alternator was gone. Nam Fong let out a heavy sigh. Was their brilliant idea a total bust? Bro, it's been 200 years. It's totally normal for these cars to have been stripped by other survivors. Let's not waste any more time. We should hit up a junkyard for better loot. Under the circumstances, Ye Wei wasn't wrong, but Nam Fong still wasn't ready to give up that easily. He started thinking from a different angle. Maybe these pre-war high-tech vehicles used a remote power source instead of a fixed one. They couldn't find an alternator in any of these wrecked cars, but that didn't mean one wasn't lying around somewhere nearby. Just then, Ye Wei shouted from a distance, "Hey, boss! Get over here, I just found something huge." "What is it? Did this clueless kid actually find a power source?" Nam Fong rushed over, but what Ye Wei had found was just a large round hole. Nam Fong's face fell. It was just a sewer entrance. But Ye Wei insisted on going inside to explore. After all, he didn't think it looked too dangerous. But Nam Fong was very hesitant, because before they left, So Kwang hadn't given any instructions about this place, and he was afraid of the potential risks lurking below. A place that even he doesn't know about is all the more worth exploring. Right? Didn't you say you didn't want to leave empty-handed? Maybe we'll find an NPC's item to unlock a hidden quest here. That sounds great in theory. But Deep V's imagination was on a whole different level. Nam Fong, this guy who's a total simp, started fantasizing about a whole squad of stacked beauties imprisoned underground, and all they had to do was go down there, defeat the monster, and rescue the damsels. And just like that, Diep V's dream of having 20 wives would come true, while in Nam Fong's imagination, there would be a treasure chest in the sewer, containing engines that could be used to generate power. Although their fantasies were different, their goals aligned perfectly. It's settled, then I'm going to get my everyday gear bag. All right, but I have to remind you not to forget the administrator's warning before we left. So Guang gave us very specific instructions. That if we encounter any non-human species, we must run as fast as possible and absolutely do not engage in combat. And if fighting is the only option left as a last resort, we must never surrender, because that would be the same as committing suicide. The two of them headed down into the pipe, and right at the entrance, Deep V stepped on a strange-looking mushroom. It looked very unusual, with tiny specks of light running along its stem. Being naturally curious, he wanted to pick a few and put them in his bag. But the android Nam Fong bluntly threw cold water on his idea. I'd seriously advise you to consider whether that's edible or not. Even if this is just a game, don't play yourself to death. This year in China, nearly 8,000 people have died from mushroom poisoning. Deep V was immediately deflated. The two of them passed the mushroom area and went deeper inside where there was almost no light left. Nyam Fong sensed danger and wanted to turn back, but Deep V recklessly charged straight ahead. Nyam Fong had no other choice but to hurry after him, but after just a few steps, Deep V suddenly froze in place. His whole body began to tremble. Although he couldn't see anything ahead, the oppressive feeling. The suffocating pressure Deep V felt now was exactly the same as when that black bird appeared. He was a sensory-type player, very sensitive, able to sense lurking danger very early on, so after 2 seconds of consideration, Deep V made a decision, which was to run. "Damn it, wait for me! Can't you give a heads up before you take off, you punk?" Nam Fong yelled. "Stop talking and just run." From deep within the darkness, a resounding roar erupted, and with it a monster with a disgustingly wide mouth lunged forward, while Diep V and Nam Fong went into full-on panic mode, running for their lives back the way they came, in no mood to observe what that thing even looked like. While Diep V and Nam Fong were searching for the engine, Lao Bak and Phuong Trong weren't slacking off either. The two of them worked at full capacity to build 2 toilets for this commendable contribution. So Guang rewarded each of them with 200 points. Afterward, he also gave detailed instructions on how to preserve fertilizer, but the biggest immediate problem was that these two reeked something awful. So Guang suggested that there was a water source about 1 kilometer away, and they should go take a bath first. Currently, with only 4 players bathing and personal hygiene, were barely manageable. But in the future, if the number of players increases to about 100, even just taking a bath would become a massive challenge, as shelters usually don't have such facilities, with enough medical supplies. If a plague were to break out, the consequences would be catastrophic. Just then, Fang Chang cooked up another brilliant idea, which was to build a bathhouse, because you never know. Female players might join the server later. Old Bai nodded enthusiastically in agreement. The two of them simultaneously put on the most degenerate, down-bad expressions imaginable. "Obviously, we can't have the ladies bathing out in the open, right, Old Bai?" "Yeah, you're absolutely right, and inside we can even provide hot water. And hey, since it's a bathhouse, there should be a communal bathing area, right?" "Yes. Yes. That's a genius idea. We might even get girlfriends out of this." The more Old Bai and Fang Chang schemed, the more excited they got, their hopes soaring for the day female players would finally log on. Meanwhile, Chu Guang, standing off to the side, didn't even try to hide his utter contempt. This player base might not be the best at anything else, but when it comes to being shameless, he was still wondering how to deal with these two creeps when, from a distance, a terrified scream echoed out, "Help! Help!" That familiar voice could only belong to one person, Ye Wei. He and Yanfeng were sprinting back like their lives depended on it. Moving so fast, they ended up crashing into each other and tumbling into a ditch, knocking themselves out cold. Ye Wei's inventory bag was flung aside, and a few mushrooms spilled out. Chu Guang picked one up to inspect it, and a satisfied smile spread across his face. It looked like they had actually found something good. "Thanks, everyone. You've all worked hard. Go get washed up, and then we'll rest." Afterward, Chu Guang prepared a large pot of soup, and even though it was bland, the players devoured it like they were starving. It's true that hard work makes any food taste delicious. Once Ye Wei and the others had eaten their fill, Chu Guang began to ask about the origin of the mushrooms. Yanfeng explained that they had found them at the entrance of a sewer drain next to the parking lot. "It was me, I was the one who found that spot." Ye Wei quickly chimed in to claim the credit, having sworn to do whatever it took to get on the good side of this powerful NPC. So are those mushrooms edible, admin, or can we use them to craft some buff potions? Chu Guang called the players out for being too naive. Using them for food or some kind of power-up was a terrible idea because this particular item was commonly known as the Blue Angel mushroom. Old Man Lu from the recycling shop had told him about them before. Unless you managed to find a non-mutated specimen, eating one of these would let you see a real angel in an hour at most because you'd be dead. But the interesting thing was that this mushroom contained a special peptide that could inhibit the effects of gamma radiation. Because of this, caravans in Bear City often purchased them at a high price to sell to the workers back home. You two are incredibly lucky, you know. This type of mushroom usually grows near the nests of mutated leeches. Mutated leeches. Chu Guang then began his Wasteland Survival 101 lesson. Mutated leeches are about the size of your palm. Aside from their specialized mouth parts, they don't look much different from regular leeches. But when they reach adulthood, they typically grow to over 1 meter long, with some exceptional specimens exceeding 3 meters. Their feeding habits also change during this stage. It's said that a fully grown mutated leech can swallow a person whole. Hearing this, both Ye Wei and Yanfeng gulped nervously. So that was the source of the strange noises they heard. They had just had a major brush with death. It was like their ancestors had to work overtime to pull them back from the brink. Do you two remember the exact location of that sewer entrance? Of course, here I've already marked it on the map. Chu Guang unfolded this map, feeling extremely satisfied. These players were becoming more and more reliable. Suddenly, he felt like a true leader, like a proud father looking over his kids. So this time, you two will receive 200 contribution points. 200 points for volunteering to find the power source, and 20 points for the lucky discovery of the Blue Angel mushrooms. Ye Wei and Yanfeng were absolutely ecstatic, partly because of this bonus points, and partly because they could feel that Chu Guang's favorability towards them had leveled up significantly. As for Chu Guang, he hadn't expected them to find something as rare as the Blue Angel mushroom on this trip. The reward should have been much higher, but he couldn't give out too many points, or they might take even deadlier risks next time and get themselves wiped. He also hadn't realized there was an entire nest of mutated leeches nearby. In any case, Chu Guang was still more focused on finding a power source than these side discoveries, but since Ye Wei and Yanfeng had brought back this haul of mushrooms, he decided to deal with them first. In total, there were about 2 kilograms, and at market price, every 50 grams of Blue Angel mushrooms could be traded for 40 potatoes. Chu Guang did some quick math and realized this batch of mushrooms was worth more than all the savings he had scraped together over the last 5 months. Moreover, that was just the price offered by Old Man Jack's recycling shop on B Street. The actual value of these mushrooms had to be at least double that amount. With that in mind, Chu Guang decided to head out for a bit. Before leaving, he didn't forget to give his little flock their instructions. I'm going out to grind for more materials. You guys stay close to home at exactly 5 p.m. Little 7 will open the elevator for you to return to the shelter. Little 7 will automatically calculate your work efficiency. If there's anything you don't understand, you can file a report. Okay. The 4 of them replied in unison while still slurping down their soup. After finishing their meal, the 4 of them put their heads together to theorycraft. Fang Chang pointed out something strange. The active compound in the Blue Angel mushroom is used as an anti-radiation. That means this type of mushroom is incredibly valuable. But the reward for Yanfeng and Ye Wei was only 20 contribution points, which is equivalent to planting 2 trees. No one else noticed this, but Fang Chang, with his years of gaming experience, couldn't help but question it. Usually, a player's quest reward is directly proportional to the quest's difficulty. Those two not only unlocked a new map area, but also brought back such high-tier loot, so a 20-point reward is totally unbalanced. So what's your theory? Seeing Fang Chang so deep in thought, Ye Wei became curious too. It's probably about priorities. The administrator once said that in this storyline. Survival is the #1 priority. I'm guessing the quests on the task board aren't the whole picture. This game gives us a lot of agency. Quests aren't just given by the NPC, they can also be triggered automatically. The others all agreed that Fang Chang's analysis was on point. This was the game-changing insight he'd had after a whole afternoon of grinding bricks to build a toilet. That was a quest assigned directly by Chu Guang, while Ye Wei and Yanfeng went on a different mission to find an engine. But even though they didn't complete that quest, they found the nest of mutated leeches and harvested a ton of mushrooms. And in the end, their contribution points were still comparable to his and Old Bai's. This means that as long as they complete a task of similar value, they'll get points, and the reward will scale with the value they generate. Furthermore, Fang Chang also believes that the quests Chu Guang posts on the assignment board only offer minor rewards. The hidden quests that players like them discover on their own must offer much bigger payouts because they showcase our true potential of the player's theory. If we find and complete hidden quests on our own, we might get a better rating from the admins. The group started nodding in agreement. He really was a pro gamer, and the more he broke it down, the more sense it made. But the more he thought about it, the more Fang Chang realized something was off, especially concerning the identity of the NPC Chu Guang, because Wastelander was advertised as a fully immersive VR role-playing game. Yet all of Chu Guang's actions and words were adjusted based on the logical progression of the storyline. It wasn't just based on some simple mechanical script. If Chu Guang wasn't as intelligent as he seemed, this theory would be baseless. But who is he to be as smart as Xiao Qi? Then maybe he's a real person role-playing. Hearing Fang Chang say this, the group grew uneasy. If Chu Guang was a real person posing as an NPC, then what's the real story here? Are you saying he's lying to us? Or that he's trying to use us, right? Fang Chang quickly shot down that idea. He only suspected Chu Guang was a real person posing as an NPC. He never once doubted his motives. Besides, since the beginning, Chu Guang had saved their lives multiple times. He never showed any intent to harm them. On the contrary, what Fang Chang was focused on now was how to gain even more favor with Chu Guang. In this first closed beta, only the 4 of them were allowed to participate. But the second closed beta would be opening soon. Fang Chang wanted to ensure all 4 of them passed the trial and secured their spots for it. Therefore, he suggested the other 3 form a party, and Lao Bai, Yanfeng, and Ye Shi had no objections. Fang Chang was an experienced gamer. Following his lead definitely wouldn't be a bad move. From now on, we're a team. Let's all share information and help each other out. All we have to do is play to our strengths. Then Fang Chang began assigning tasks in detail. Yanfeng was assigned to scout along the lakeshore and the nearby flooded wetland park, which included observing the distribution of species and their behavioral patterns. If you see anything suspicious, you need to mark it for the group. Got it? Don't get too close, and especially avoid combat. We're prioritizing safety. Understood. Yanfeng was as obedient as a puppy, and agreed immediately. Yeshu, standing nearby, gritted his teeth, a bit resentful. Hey, that guy just made himself the party leader. Didn't he? He wanted to be the leader, too. As for Lao Bai, Fang Chang wanted to make the most of his strength. So the 2 of them agreed to continue chopping wood, and later they would go online to figure out how to use their stockpile. That afternoon on Base Street, the arrival of a beautiful girl caused a commotion throughout the entire camp. The survivors saw a girl with a pretty face and a perfect figure, but her clothes were tattered, shabby, and filthy, and more importantly, she had a yoke around her neck. The man surnamed Li dragged her along like a pet, followed by his caravan of merchants from Theyre, who were bringing goods to trade. Old Man Chell came out personally on behalf of the district mayor to greet caravan leader Li. As usual, as soon as he saw Chell, he shoved the beautiful girl forward. This woman is what your mayor wanted, so go ahead and deliver her. Also tell him that it's getting hard to find high-quality goods like this, so he should take good care of her. There won't be many more like her in the future. Chell gave a sycophantic laugh, promising to escort the girl safely to the mayor's fortress. Chu Guang, watching from a distance, saw the whole scene unfold. He remembered Old Man Trak Lai mentioning that the slave trade was a real thing in Bear City. Chu Guang had thought he was just bluffing, but seeing that guy named Li leading the girl here today, he finally believed it was true. But for such a luxury item, it made sense that only the district mayor would have the clout to buy it. In Chu Guang's imagination, the mayor instantly morphed into a fat slob with some seriously sus and despicable hobbies. But that wasn't the main quest right now, because his goal today was to make contact with the caravan from Bear City. That was his key to offloading those 2 kilograms of mushrooms for a top-tier price. Meanwhile, Old Man Li had just paid his porters and was riding off. Chu Guang was already waiting on the path he would take back. As Old Man Li passed by, he spoke up slowly. Mr. Li, you got a minute? I've got something you're gonna want. Old Man Li stopped his horse, sizing up Chu Guang. He had a rifle slung over his shoulder. "Who are you? I don't mean any harm. I just want to make a deal." Seeing the rifle, Chu Guang quickly raised his hands to his head. Even though he was wearing nanocarbon armor, he was still a bit shook. Not gonna lie, because a headshot would probably still send him to the Shadow Realm. "A deal? You're new to Bet Street, aren't you? I don't care who you are, and I don't do petty business. Go sell your little bits of junk to Track Lie." Chu Guang opened the 2 bags of mushrooms as if to ask, "Are you sure these 2 kilograms of mushrooms are junk?" As expected. Old Man Li was hooked. He jumped off his horse, tossed his rifle to his subordinate, and moved closer to Chu Guang. "Where did you find this stuff?" "In a mutant leech nest in the sewers. Want to come along?" Old Man Li wasn't interested in going, just a little curious. He asked Chu Guang to name his price. After some thought, he asked for 200 chips for the 2 kilograms of mushrooms. He knew this stuff was super valuable, but 200 chips was way beyond what Track Lie could ever pay, so he was a bit nervous. But unexpectedly, Old Man Li agreed in a heartbeat. Chu Guang felt both disappointed and annoyed. He had totally lowballed the offer. If he'd known it would be this easy, he would have asked for 10 times more. It seemed every deal with the merchants of Bet Street's mayor brought in massive profits like this. Chu Guang silently cursed him in his head. What a scumbag. After the successful transaction, Old Man Li had a small request. He hoped that Track Lie wouldn't find out about their deal today. Chu Guang agreed immediately, since all he wanted was the cash and had zero interest in getting caught up in drama. Old Man Li let out a hearty laugh. "Looks like this young man is a smart one. I can give you 200 chips right now, but I'm guessing you're just going to spend that money on something else, right? In that case, it's better if you buy directly from me, because the retail prices are a total ripoff," Old Man Li generously offered. "I still have some stock, and if you want to buy, I'll give you a 20% discount out of respect for those 2 kilograms of mushrooms." Chu Guang was pretty surprised. A 20% discount was a big deal. But whatever, as long as he could get gear cheaper than on Bet Street, it was a major win. So, he said he wanted a good gun. Old Man Li had just the thing, offering him a 9mm iron pipe rifle for exactly 200 chips. "I can also sell you 30 rounds of ammo for a very reasonable price." Chu Guang picked up the rifle, aimed it for a moment, then lowered it. "Is the price you just quoted with the 20% discount already applied?" Seeing his hesitation, Old Man Li introduced him to another cheaper gun. Specifically, it was the one he was holding, a 5mm caliber piece for just 100 chips. This thing was still useful for fending off raiders, but completely useless against the mutated monsters out there. Chu Guang silently scoffed. The price was a total ripoff, and that was supposedly after a 20% discount. Just as he thought. Merchants were nothing but greedy sharks. In the end, he locked in his choice to buy the 9mm iron pipe rifle, along with 60 rounds of ammo. On top of that, Chu Guang also needed 25 potato points for food and other supplies. Old Man Li just laughed. "Hey, kid, are you out of your mind?" Chu Guang didn't give a straight answer, instead replying with a hint. "There are still over 2 kilograms of mushrooms in the mutant leech nest. Mr. Li, you're a sharp guy, you can take a hint. You catch my drift, right? You want me to invest in you. And why not? I bet you'll still make a killing, even if you take a small hit on this deal with me. If you front me this, I promise my next haul will be 10 times bigger than today's." Old Man Li stroked his chin. This kid was certainly one of a kind, but Chu Guang's offer was too good to pass up. 20 kilograms of Blue Angel mushrooms was a king's ransom. With that kind of payout, forget one gun, he could buy 100 and still have cash to spare. So without thinking twice, the merchant made his decision. "Let's make a deal. My real name is L. I rarely do business directly with scavengers, but you're a clear exception. You've really piqued my interest." Chu Guang reached out and shook L's offered hand, thanking him. "My name is Chu Guang. I know you mentioned it earlier. Here's to a profitable partnership." Chu Guang knew L was just putting on a friendly facade. After all, a man doesn't get that rich without being a ruthless merchant. He thought to himself, "You try to rip me off today, and I swear I'll make you pay it back tenfold later." L ordered his subordinate to bring over a new iron pipe rifle, 60 rounds of ammo, and some essential supplies for Chu Guang. But that wasn't all. He also handed him a fresh stack of chips. In his entire career, L had almost never personally handed over cash to anyone. Chu Guang was the very first person to break that rule. I guess this is my lucky day. Huh. Chu Guang took the stack of chips feeling extremely satisfied. L hoped the kid's lucky streak would continue, because that was the only way he'd get more blue angel mushrooms for his business. After all, to farm more mushrooms, Chu Guang would have to face the immense danger of the mutant leech nest. No one knew just how many leeches were swarming in that nest, and more importantly, conventional firearms were completely ineffective against them. What was even more terrifying was their insane healing factor, living up to the saying of being tough as a leech. Even if you sliced one in half, it would just regenerate into two separate creatures after a short while. Chu Guang began to consider using fire to torch them. While Chu Guang was deep in thought, L clapped him on the shoulder from behind, making him jump. I'll be back at the end of the month, or this could be the last time we ever meet. But I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing you and your 20 kilograms of blue angel mushrooms next time. For 20 kilograms of blue mushrooms next time, L was prepared to pay Chu Guang a cool 2,000 chips, or you could choose to stay with me and order from my inventory. No need to go out and scavenge, someone will deliver it to you. How do I know you even have the gear I need in your stock? Chu Guang was skeptical. L was a merchant after all, so he didn't exactly trust the guy. L chuckled at Chu Guang's distrust. He snapped his fingers, and a subordinate immediately brought over a tablet-like device displaying a massive item catalog. Chu Guang was amazed. The guy truly had a massive stash of high-tier loot, everything from weapons to protective gear, all guaranteed to be exactly as shown in the pictures. If Chu Guang was interested, the man would offer him a great deal, and even provide a detailed user guide. Chu Guang scrolled through the catalog for a bit. He finally found what he was looking for, a generator, and he was as thrilled as an explorer discovering a new continent. Lis saw the look on Chu Guang's face and instantly knew he'd made his choice. When Chu Guang pointed to the generator, the old man let out a surprised, "Oh, you've got a sharp eye, kid. The KV one might be the most basic model, but it's also the most durable. However, with generators, if you're worried about running out of juice, you should grab some spare batteries." Lis claimed the replacement batteries were super cheap, but his version of super cheap was a whopping 150 chips for a single chemical energy cell. Still, all things considered, the cost of replacement cells wouldn't exceed 1,000 chips. Lis was just extremely curious. A generator isn't small. You can't just hide it under your coat. And Chu Guang was just an ordinary guy. Where would he even put it after buying it? "Don't you worry, sir. I'll be taking it back to Bayer City." Lis couldn't figure out this young man's game, so he decided not to even try. He bid Chu Guang farewell and left first. It was getting late anyway. Chu Guang returned to Bayer Street, where a crowd had gathered in front of Charles's store, stocking up on essentials for the coming winter. The place was bustling with activity. But then a sudden mobilization order from the mayor dropped. Specifically, by the end of the month, each household was required to hand over 100 kilograms of firewood and 2 animal pelts. The citizens were furious, but they had no choice. After all, failing to pay this tax meant getting kicked out onto the streets. Chu Guang headed back to his house on the street. The sound of a loud argument caught his attention. It was Xiao Yu arguing with a scrawny kid because she was still wholeheartedly looking after Chu Guang's house. But this kid Wang Defu was insisting that Chu Guang was already dead. The argument reached its peak. Just as tensions boiled over, Wang Defu raised his fist to teach Xiao Yu a lesson, but before the punch could even fly, his arm was caught by Chu Guang. "Who said I was dead?" Seeing Chu Guang appear out of nowhere, Wang Defu started trembling like a leaf. Xiao Yu, on the other hand, was overjoyed to see him. She quickly recounted what had happened the day before. That little punk tried to take advantage of Chu Guang's absence to wreck his house, and she had risked everything to stop him, almost getting beaten up in the process. "Oh, I see. Thanks for watching the house for me. I'm here now, no one can bully you." Chu Guang put an arm around Xiao Yu's shoulder. This made her blush bright red. He then turned to Wang Defu, his tone anything but friendly. "Little Wang, do you want to go home on your own, or should I see you out?" Little Wang was shaking uncontrollably, especially when he saw Chu Guang's hand reach for the iron bar on his back. He immediately bolted. But before he left, he didn't forget to threaten that he would tell his father what happened today. Turning back to Xiao Yu, Chu Guang noticed her staring at him and guessed she was hoping for a reward. So he took out a lollipop. Xiao Yu was ecstatic as she took it. Just as she unwrapped the candy and popped it in her mouth, 3 tall, burly men approached from a distance. "Xiao Yu, what are you doing over there?" It turned out to be the Yu family, a father and his 2 sons returning from work. Hearing her father's voice, Xiao Yu jumped and then scurried away. Chu Guang was confused by this reaction. Could it be that the Yu family didn't want Xiao Yu associating with him? Surely it wasn't that serious. After all, their second son Yu Hu used to come over for a chat all the time. As Yu Hu walked past Chu Guang, he stopped out of habit to exchange a few words. "You weren't here, I seriously thought you were dead." Then he started his whole sob story about the mayor's new mobilization order. His family has 3 able-bodied men, so they have to turn in a whopping 300 kilograms of firewood and 6 animal pelts. Yu Hu wanted to team up with Chu Guang for a hunt, because the Li family's people said a large herd of deer was spotted migrating through the northern forest. If they could bag a few, they'd not only get the pelts but also have meat to eat. But Chu Guang tactfully declined. They wanted to hunt in the northern forest. While his base's wetland park was to the northwest, he just hoped they wouldn't cross paths. Meanwhile, Yu Hu was still lost in his own story, and since he ran into Chu Guang today, he also brought up the matter of Xiao Yu coming of marrying age. If Chu Guang was interested, they could even hold the wedding tonight, no problem. What is wrong with this guy? Chu Guang hastily refused and then booked it out of there, leaving a bewildered Yu Hu standing alone. He clicked his tongue in regret. He could sense that Chu Guang was no ordinary person, someone who could become a major player on Beth Street in the future. But he was sure the Li family wouldn't let him marry his sister to Chu Guang. What a shame. As for Chu Guang, just the thought of having to marry a loli like Xiao Yu made him feel like a pair of handcuffs was about to snap onto his wrists. Even if, in this world, she was of legal age to marry, he would absolutely never accept it. The next day at the nursing home, the 4 players were still diligently grinding their quests. Old Bai had just harvested a new pile of firewood and was teaching Fang Cheng how to process it, so it wouldn't warm in various ways. What worried Old Bai the most right now was that they had already gathered enough wood over the past 2 days. But since it wasn't treated, if they used it to repair the walls, it would probably rot after just a few rainstorms. Fang Cheng proposed an alternative plan, which was to use cement as a substitute material. There was a lot of concrete waste nearby. These broken concrete chunks couldn't be used directly, but if they were mixed with cement and reinforced with some steel bars, it would surely be much better than wood. But the problem was, where would they get cement? To craft cement now, they'd need enough coal and a kiln that could withstand temperatures of about 1,450 degrees Celsius. Just then, Ye Wei and Yan Feng returned. They brought back a new discovery. There was an entire river east of Ling Lake that wasn't on the map. Ye Wei took out the map, on which he and Yan Feng had marked the detailed territories and nests of various species. They also marked a safe spot to collect drinking water. Fang Cheng looked at the bucket Ye Wei was carrying and asked curiously, "What's in here?" "Oh, just a new toy I found by the riverbank," remembering what happened earlier. Ye Wei had even fantasized about encountering a beautiful NPC bathing by the river. But unexpectedly, all they found was a pile of sludge. Yanfeng thought it could be used as a building material, so he scooped some up to bring back. Old Bai checked it out. This stuff was currently useless, but if they processed it, that might be a different story. "Our kiln is a go." A kiln. Ye Wei was surprised. While he and Yanfeng were out scouting Ling Lake, just how many new ideas had the other 2 cooked up? Fang Cheng explained that he and Old Bai wanted to craft cement for construction, but Yanfeng was a bit hesitant. "Do you guys really think this is a good idea?" "What's not to like?" Old Bai spoke up. "Don't forget this is an open-world game. The only limit is our imagination, not what we can do. Let's get to work right away." However, Old Bai complained that this little bit of sludge was not nearly enough to build the kiln, so he told Ye Wei and Yan Feng to go haul a few more barrels back. Meanwhile, he and Fang Cheng would continue chopping trees for firewood. "Let's go. We have to give the administrator a surprise," but unfortunately, Ye Wei and Yan Feng ran into another monster. This time it was a two-headed mutant bear, and what's worse, Yanfeng tripped and fell flat on his face. The situation was incredibly dire, and just as the bear's claws were about to rip him to shreds, Chu Guang jolted awake. Holy crap, it was just a nightmare. He sat up to collect himself, thankful it wasn't real, but now there was another pretty urgent situation. That those 4 players had eaten nearly all the food he had stockpiled over the last 5 months. He didn't know how they were doing back at the shelter, and even though Xiao Qi was keeping an eye on things, Chu Guang still felt uneasy. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. It was Xiao. The little girl came over to give Chu Guang a cookie and took the opportunity to tell him a secret. "Brother, my older brother gave me this cookie, but he told me to bring it over and pretend I made it myself." Chu Guang broke out in a cold sweat. That Hu guy was really going all out to play matchmaker. As he was chatting with Xiao, 2 uninvited guests appeared. "Oh, you're planning to go hunting too? Then you'd better make sure to stay alive." It was Wang Fudi and his older brother. Xiao, terrified, quickly hid behind Chu Guang. Wang Fudi's brother was tall and built a stark contrast to his scrawny sibling. He only passed by for a moment, but Chu Guang immediately recognized that this guy was not to be trifled with. It seemed the 2 brothers were preparing to go out and hunt for pelts, and then Chu Guang also had to leave for his own errands. Xiao shyly said goodbye to him, promising as usual to look after the house. Chu Guang couldn't help but pat her head. What a good girl. Too bad she's a little too young. He figured he'd wait for Xiao to grow up. Chu Guang then went to Charles's shop to trade for wheat. Additionally, he also traded for some herbs used to preserve meat. Supplies were running low, but now that he had a gun, hunting would be much easier. The plan was to use the herbs to cure any uneaten meat and store it for the winter. Charles tossed the bag of wheat down in front of him, then said meaningfully, "I remember you just bought 5 kilograms of wheat a few days ago. Looks like you're stocking up very carefully for this winter, huh?" Only then did Chu Guang realize his oversight. He hadn't brought anything useful here to trade for chips recently, and yet he had made 2 large food purchases in quick succession. Once the mayor saw the income and expenditure report, he might suspect Chu Guang was forming his own faction. A careless move could lead to a life-threatening disaster. How would that group of rookies at home survive on their own? Chu Guang just gave a perfunctory reply and left with the bag of wheat. He didn't want Charles to take notice of him at all. Even though the guy was good to him, he was still the mayor's man. The moment the players saw Chu Guang, they were as happy as kids seeing their mother, and he was also surprised to see them seriously building a few kilns. "What's this? This task wasn't on the duty roster. I was busy outside all night. Did you guys encounter any mutated beasts or other survivors here?" Fortunately, no. Fang Cheng excitedly showed off their accomplishment of building kilns to produce cement. Chu Guang was astonished to hear this because he had also tried mixing ash with mud to make cement, but it was basically unusable. It turned out he had been using the wrong method all along. These players were surprisingly knowledgeable. Fang Chang's group was working themselves to the bone, just hoping to gain more favorability points from Chu Guang. Guangan also promised to reward them with an assistant to share the workload, which definitely caught the attention of the 3 from the Nam Fong family. The word assistant made their eyes sparkle, hoping the admin would set them up with some hot female NPCs. If that happened, it would be a total game changer. Young and beautiful, of course. So Guang was speechless, thinking some things never change. He just instructed the crew to get back to their tasks, as they enthusiastically got back to grinding their missions, so Guang felt a bit more relieved. While they were busy flexing their skills, he could focus on stocking up on supplies and food. Thanks to the 4 players' impressive hustle, so Guang even earned some extra bonus points. He cashed in 7 points for 7 basic loot boxes, but the result was 5 lollipops, 1 chocolate bar, and a bag of 500 grams of refined salt. So, Guang let out a heavy sigh. Besides the salt, the candy was pretty much useless junk. However, that refined salt could probably be traded for 20 to 30 times its weight in coarse salt, but he quickly shut down that idea. Salt was a high-tier commodity here, second only to weapons, but grinding out small trades wasn't a sustainable long-term strategy. It was better to focus on the base building meta. During his downtime, So Guang also checked the Bull God Club chat group, which had seen a huge influx of new members lately, all hyped to try out Wazen. But So Guang wasn't impressed by any of them, except for one person. A user with the handle "The Real Toilet Guy" was the only one who seemed to know his stuff. So Guang checked his profile, and it looked like he was a furniture seller IRL. That meant his skills could be clutch for dealing with the massive pile of lumber that Old Bai and Feng Trung had been stockpiling. With that thought, So Guang immediately slid into the guy's DMs. "Hey, interested in joining a closed beta test?" The Real Toilet Guy's real name was Quan Hu, and he was indeed a furniture store owner. He was in the middle of his workday when he received So Guang's message. Quan Hu was shocked that a game admin would contact him directly. At first, he suspected it was a scam, but the game registration link So Guang sent was too intriguing to ignore, so Quan Hu decided to roll the dice. After Quan Hu registered, he sent the setup code back to So Guang, who scheduled him to officially log in for the first time in 3 days. So now they had a carpenter. So Guang figured the outpost would probably still need a few more people. But unexpectedly, Quan Hu was a total noob and immediately went into the chat group to flex about how he'd scored a beta slot. The chat immediately blew up with tons of people who had signed up way before him, absolutely furious. This gave So Guang a massive headache. He had to do some quick damage control to calm down the angry mob of waitlisted players. He explained that since the game was in its alpha phase, they needed to test various class systems, which is why they were recruiting players with specific real-world skills to be their guinea pigs. So Guang also promised to open up another 100 slots in a few days, which finally managed to appease the players who were about to rage quit the group. With that crisis averted, he started seriously considering adding more new players. After all, the base's food supply was already stocked with dozens of kilograms. Plus, now that they had guns, they could hunt for game meat, so adding a few more mouths to feed shouldn't be a major issue. Then it hit him. Even with all this food, they needed someone who could actually cook it, so he went back to the chat group to announce that he needed a chef to test the new cooking system. The Bull God Club chat almost instantly exploded. It was pure chaos. Pick me, I can whip up Kung Pao chicken with my eyes closed. The meat I make is crispy but not burnt tender. But not greasy pick me. So Guang's screen was flooded. Seriously, who couldn't cook a basic meal with 1 meat and 2 veggie dishes these days? But luckily, he then noticed someone, a Western cuisine chef, so reputable that he even posted a picture of his medals and certificates to prove his identity. All right, let's pick this guy right away. With the manpower issue settled, So Guang went up to the 3rd floor of the nursing home to check on things. Little Seven was overjoyed to see him. Its battery was down to just 1%. So Guang was stunned, realizing he had never charged Little Seven before. "I have a wireless charging port on me. Just go back to the shelter for a bit and I'll be fine." So Guang let out an, "Oh, no wonder there were no outlets in the shelter." Even the computer on the desk never seemed to run out of battery turns. Out it was all wireless charging. He then carried Little Seven back to the base. At that moment, it remembered something else. The power system in the shelter was supplied by energy from a nuclear fusion reactor core, so the power there could last for a very long time. The smile on So Guang's face gradually turned wicked. It seemed he had to figure out a way to siphon power from the base to the outpost, but before he could be happy for more than 3 seconds, Little Seven continued. "It's now the year 2340 based on the year this shelter was built. That power source has been in use for a very long time. Running out of power is entirely possible. Because this shelter was originally supposed to be opened 100 years ago, but for some reason it wasn't officially discovered until So Guang showed up recently. After dropping Little Seven off at the shelter to charge, So Guang thought for a long time. After all, this place had been delayed for a century. But during that time, the equipment and systems were still using power to operate, so the remaining power might only last for a few more decades at most. If that was really the case, the upcoming winter made him even more worried. The preparation time was becoming increasingly urgent. So Guang felt incredibly stressed. He stepped out of the nursing home, and outside the other 4 people had already built 8 kilns in the blink of an eye. Seriously, that speed was just insane. So Guang wasn't a stingy person either. Seeing the players grinding so hard, he immediately awarded each of them 1,000 contribution points for unlocking cement as a building material. Old Bai was promoted to be the architectural captain of Outpost Shelter 404. So Guang allowed Old Bai to freely implement his ideas within the planned area to design and build the base. Ye Wei stood to the side, his eyes practically exploding with jealousy, like a child. On what grounds does Old Bai get an extra reward? Tell me your upcoming plan. Old Bai obediently spilled the beans on everything he had planned. Yesterday, after logging off, he went to a real-life cement factory to do some research. The master craftsman at the factory said that adding a little iron powder would increase the hardness of the final product. In Wasteland, there's rust everywhere. So Old Bai wants to mix it with charcoal, then fire it to create iron powder, and then fire the iron powder together with the cement. That way they can create a type of super durable cement, but relying on just these few small kilns producing a large amount of cement is impossible. Therefore, Old Bai plans to use all the newly produced cement to build a larger piece of equipment, which can increase cement production output. Not a bad plan, but if you use up all the tree bark, how much cement can you make? That's why I'm saying we need a more professional kiln, the kind that can reach 1,450 degrees Celsius. That way we can create carbonate cement by burning limestone and clay, completely replacing ash as the raw material. Truly, a well-thought-out plan, and very knowledgeable. So Guang was extremely satisfied, and he also took the opportunity to announce that 2 new members were about to join. To welcome them to the team, he wanted to throw a little party, so they needed some meat. So who's down to go pig hunting with me? The moment the offer was made, all 4 of them raised their hands in unison, making Chu Guang feel like he was running a daycare. For real, a hunt didn't need that many people. Ye Wei was a perception-based player, a perfect fit for the job, so Chu Guang chose him. Before leaving the shelter to hunt the pig, Chu Guang had Ye Wei take him to the mutated leech nest. He just took a quick look and left, since their main objective today was hunting a pig, not gathering mushrooms. But the location Chu Guang led Ye Wei to today wasn't the familiar forest near the base, but the northern outskirts of Qingquan City. Ye Wei was blown away by the sight before him. After the apocalypse, this place had become a paradise for fungi and plants. Wildlife had invaded the city, and under the influence of radiation and weapons, genetics and time had caused them to mutate and become incredibly ferocious. But the danger here wasn't just those mutated beasts. Ye Wei was both terrified and excited, sticking to Chu Guang like glue, not daring to stray a single step. Suddenly, Chu Guang sensed something was off. Specifically, there were traces of other survivors. Ye Wei's excitement was written all over his face. You didn't need to be a mind reader to know. He was imagining some hot NPC girl about to appear, but seeing Chu Guang's dead serious expression, he knew he shouldn't be so hyped, because out here, strangers were even more dangerous than mutated beasts. He carefully examined the traces. It was high-sulfur gunpowder and rusty nails from shrapnel. This was a detonated mine. Normally, survivors wouldn't set mines in a residential area because you don't need that kind of firepower to take on regular mutated beasts. Looks like the main target was human. Right. And based on the lingering smell, the mine had gone off recently, 5 hours ago at most. When you guys came up from the vault, did you hear an explosion? Chu Guang asked, but Ye Wei was certain he hadn't heard any sound like that. Chu Guang told Ye Wei to stay put while he scouted the area. At first, Ye Wei wanted to tag along, but Chu Guang's attitude was so firm and intimidating that he didn't dare push it, afraid of getting kicked out of this game. Chu Guang was on high alert. This place was way too close to the shelter where the players were busy crafting up a storm. If there were really predators or a tribe of mutants nearby, the smoke and noise from their production would be discovered sooner or later. This threat was a ticking time bomb, and Chu Guang forced himself not to hesitate. He had to deal with this problem first. He entered a ruined apartment complex and saw a pack of about 20-something mutated rats, so it seemed. It wasn't a nest. They were dealt with quickly, but as he stepped out, his gaze fell upon something 100 times more terrifying. It was a group of lit-up tents. Typically, survivor settlements came in 2 types. One was concentrated in buildings not too heavily destroyed by the war, while the other type was set up in abandoned lots, or clearings that could be fortified. Tents this large likely meant the enemy was a type of mutant with an average height of 2 meters and weighing over 300 kilograms. They ate anything, not just fungi and plants, but even mutated flies, rats, and cockroaches. They'd eat it all. Of course, their favorite meal was still their own kind, specifically 2-legged humans. Chu Guang observed. For a moment longer, and sure enough, he spotted a mutant, specifically a guard with a massive bow slung across his back. Right now. So Guang and DFV pushed deeper inside, but they barely reached the gate before being attacked by guards. Moreover, from this distance, So Guang couldn't get a clear look at their total numbers. But based on the size of the encampment, he estimated there were about 20 to 30 of them. This was a hornet's nest you definitely didn't want to poke. Coincidentally, a quest popped up right then: eliminate the mutant tribe on Route 76 for a reward of 200 points. So Guang gritted his teeth. He hated this system. Fighting those mutants was basically a suicide mission, but that 200-point reward was just too tempting. So Guang went back and told Deep V about the mutant tribe. He was shocked, thinking he'd stumbled upon some hot NPC, not a terrifying enemy. After assessing the situation, So Guang knew they couldn't attack right away. After all, they only had one gun, and he was the only one capable of fighting. So he led DFV on a retreat down a different path. While leaving, they stumbled upon a huge pile of limestone, enough to make cement for 2 buildings with plenty to spare. So Guang quickly marked the location for Laobak to use in the future, at 3 in the afternoon. So Guang and DFV returned, bringing back 2 hyenas for food. At the same time, he shared 2 pieces of new intel. The good news was the discovery of the limestone pile, and it goes without saying how thrilled Laobak was. He had been stressing about finding materials to refine into calcium carbonate, but now that problem was solved. So what's the bad news? Feng Trung asked hesitantly. The bad news was the mutant tribe camped out on Route 76, which was right by the eastern gate of the wetland park, dangerously close to their base. Even though the other players hadn't encountered the mutants yet, So Guang's story made them realize how dangerous they were. So Guang also made it clear that dealing with them now was impossible. They'd need to be at least level 10 or higher to even consider it. Therefore, the current plan was to stay clear of the Route 76 area and the wetland park's east gate until the threat was eliminated. All 4 of them readily agreed. Now the next problem was how to prepare the 2 hyenas. So Guang had eaten meat skewers on the street before, and knew they tasted pretty good, but the key issue was he didn't know how to butcher them. He only remembered that you had to drain the blood after a hunt so the meat wouldn't be gamey. Coincidentally, at that moment, Nam Fong wanted to ask for some hyena blood because he had a few theories he needed to verify. So Guang didn't ask many questions and decisively ripped off a leg and handed it over, scaring the daylights out of Nam Fong. Meanwhile, Laobak had finished building several kilns. If everything went according to plan, they would have their first batch of cement by tomorrow. So Guang offered a few words of praise, and Laobak was so happy he beamed. He also realized that lately, they didn't seem to care as much about the rewards anymore. The real motivation driving the whole squad was the joy of building something from scratch. After a busy day, So Guang returned to the shelter. The situation with the pre-order group back on Earth was getting more hyped every day, especially since Feng Trung was posting detailed reviews of their production process on the forums. The netizens' reactions were pretty positive. Most were intrigued, and many even left helpful suggestions based on their own knowledge. With that done, So Guang checked his quest rewards. Today's haul was just a few meager points, so he got back to the grind. He used them to test his gacha luck by opening the beginner's loot boxes, but the results were the same as always, mostly just lollipops. This damn stingy system. So Guang was getting tilted, but suddenly he noticed one lollipop in the pile that looked a little different. So Guang picked it up for a closer look, and the status window instantly popped up. Holy smokes, this thing was actually a buff that increased his strength by 10%, and it dropped from a beginner's loot box of all things. Was this some kind of god-tier jackpot drop?